Imagine a town where the heartbeat of life has always been the gentle lapping of water against the shore, where the dawn breaks not just with light, but with the promise of community and continuity. In this serene setting, George Harmon, a venerable figure at 74, stood as a living monument to a bygone era. His face, sculpted by decades under the sun, bore the marks of countless sunrises over the tranquil lake that cradled his small town. Born into the embrace of this close-knit community, George had once served his nation at sea, only to return to the shores that whispered his name with every wave. For 40 years, George's silhouette was as much a part of the morning as the mist rising from the water. His daily ritual was not one of necessity or sport. It was a sacred act of giving. Each morning, he would row his time-worn wooden boat to the heart of the lake, his nets cast not for personal gain, but to provide sustenance to those in need. His catch, a humble offering, found its way to the soup kitchen at the community church, to the local homeless shelter, and to the elderly neighbors whose hands could no longer pull in a net. As the town of Millwater transformed around him, with tourism supplanting the old industries, George remained unchanged, a beacon of constancy. The once familiar streets now lined with trendy cafes and chic boutiques where hardware stores and fishing tackle shops once thrived. His faded USS Liberty cap, a quiet testament to his service, was as much a part of him as the lake was to the town. The crisis emerged when the town council, grappling with budget deficits, made a swift, clandestine deal with Horizon Leisure Group. This private resort developer aimed to convert the public lake and its surrounding parkland into an exclusive luxury destination. The decision was made with minimal public input and an abundance of political maneuvering. On that pivotal Tuesday morning, as the first orange hues of dawn kissed the sky, George arrived at his customary spot. He unloaded his tackle box from his ancient pickup, adjusted his navy cap, and walked down the dock that had borne his weight for decades. The air was crisp with the touch of early autumn, carrying with it the scent of change. The chill of the morning mist rose from the lake, swirling like ethereal greetings to an old friend. Just as George had unfolded his trusty collapsible chair, a voice sliced through the serene silence. "Sir, this is private property now. You need to leave immediately." The words came from a young security guard, his uniform crisp, adorned with the Horizon logo that seemed to challenge the very tranquility of the scene. George, with the calm of someone who had seen many seasons, turned to face the guard. "I've been fishing here since before your parents were born, son." His voice steadied as he continued to ready his fishing line. But the guard's tone turned steely. "That doesn't matter anymore. The lake is under new management. No fishing without a proper permit from Horizon Leisure." From the depths of his weathered jacket, George produced a dog-eared card, his special fishing exemption, a token of gratitude from the previous mayor for his years of community service. "I have permission," he declared, presenting the card with a hopeful look. The guard barely glanced at it before his fingers, with deliberate malice, tore it in half. "This is worthless now, old man. New owners, new rules." On the shore, someone had begun capturing the confrontation on their phone, their laughter mingling with the lapping of the water. As George reached for his fishing rod, propped against the dock, the guard gripped his arm, pulling him away from the water's edge. "Wait!" George protested, his voice tinged with urgency. But as he moved, the guard's shove sent him stumbling, the rod falling and snapping against the wooden planks with a heart-wrenching crack that echoed across the still water. "Consider that your warning," the guard declared, his voice loud, playing to his audience. "Next time, there will be trespassing charges." In the video that would soon circulate online, one could see George, his heart heavy, kneeling to gather the broken pieces of his rod, a cherished gift from his late wife on their final anniversary, before cancer took her from him. He cradled the fragments, each splinter a shard of their shared past, now shattered by the harsh new reality. The morning joggers and curious onlookers gathered around, their presence as unavoidable as the sunrise. Yet, among the whispers and the clicks of cameras, not a single voice rose in George's defense. Some filmed the scene, others murmured their thoughts, but most stood by, their discomfort palpable, yet none dared to disrupt what seemed like the inevitable march of progress. A young man, clad in expensive running gear, spoke loudly to his companion, his voice carrying the arrogance of the new era. "It's about time they clean this place up. That old guy's been squatting on prime real estate for years." George, hearing but choosing silence, carried himself with a dignity that seemed to whisper of a time long past. With the care one might use to fold a flag at a military funeral, he tucked the broken fishing rod under his arm and began his walk back to his truck. Behind him, the security guard was already setting up "no fishing" and private property signs along the dock. As George drove away, the morning sun pierced the horizon, bathing the lake in a golden light. In his rearview mirror, he watched construction vehicles roll in, the vanguard of a transformation that would erase all traces of men like him. What escaped everyone's notice, their focus fixed on the figure of the embarrassed old man, was how his fingers had instinctively folded the torn permit with the precision of military lines. His eyes, before they turned away from the water, had scanned the horizon with the practiced vigilance of someone who once watched for enemies approaching from the sea. George's home, nestled at the forest's edge, was a modest cabin he had built with his own hands upon returning from service. Unlike the opulent lakefront properties now fetching millions, his dwelling valued function over form. Its wooden walls were adorned with decades of memories, photographs of naval vessels, certificates of commendation, and a shadow box holding his service medals, medals he never spoke of. Inside, he placed the broken fishing rod with a gentle reverence, the cabin enveloping him in a silent embrace of history and solitude. George sat at the table, his fishing rod idle beside him, and opened the cedar chest that cradled his most cherished memories. From within, he tenderly lifted a meticulously folded American flag, the very one that had draped his beloved Margaret's coffin 8 years ago. Nestled beside it was his Navy insignia and a faded photograph capturing his unit aboard the USS Liberty. He had been among the few survivors of that harrowing storm off the Philippine coast in 1972, a day when he had secured lifelines, saving 3 of his shipmates from the merciless sea. That experience had engraved in him the profound lesson of resilience, of holding fast when the world seemed intent on tearing you away. His body felt the burden of years as he settled into his armchair, the weight of time pressing more heavily upon him than usual. Through the window, the lake shimmered in the distance, a sight now as unattainable as if it lay on a distant planet. Day 14 since the ban, he noted in his leather-bound journal, a companion from his Navy days, "I've never felt more like a stranger in the place I've called home my entire life." The retirement community in Phoenix, where his daughter resided, had been reaching out more insistently. "It's time, Dad," she'd say with a gentle urgency. "This town isn't yours anymore." Yet, George had always demurred. How could he convey that his roots were not bound by property deeds or city limits, but were deeply entwined with the very heartbeat of the lake? As dusk painted the sky, George flipped open his ancient flip phone, only to discover he had unwittingly become an internet sensation. His humiliation was now entertainment for thousands, the video of his trespass set to comical tunes, with captions mocking "Boomer can't read, no trespassing" signs. The irony was not lost on him. The same waters that had once been his solace were now the source of his latest public shaming. In the shadow of defeat, where old fish fights the new lake owners and loses, the comments beneath the article were even more scathing. "That generation thinks they own everything," they scoffed, "just because they've been around forever." Perhaps, if he had invested in real estate rather than fish, he wouldn't be lamenting his fate now. "Time to move to a retirement home, Grandpa," one sneered. "The world belongs to those who can pay for it." A knock at his door pulled George from his brooding. It was Bill Jenkins from the hardware store, one of the few old-timers still running a business downtown. "Heard what happened at the lake," Bill said, gratefully accepting the cup of coffee George offered. "Rough deal." "It's their property now," George replied, his voice devoid of any bitterness. "They can do what they want with it." Bill shifted uncomfortably, his eyes not quite meeting George's. "Town's changing, George. Maybe it's time to consider moving on." George finished his thought for him. "This is my home, Bill. I buried Margaret here. My whole life is in this soil. I understand, but these developers, they've got the council in their pocket. Bill said, his voice low. "They're talking about turning the entire lakefront into a members-only resort. Annual fees more than what most folks around here make in a month." "And what does the town think about that?" George wondered silently. Bill looked away, avoiding the question. "Most of the original families have already sold and moved. The newcomers, they want the property values to keep rising. They're calling it progress." After Bill left, George stood on his porch, his gaze drifting toward the water that had sustained generations of Millwater residents. In the gathering darkness, he could see the new security lights installed along the shore, stark and intrusive against the natural landscape. Memories flooded back, teaching local children to fish on summer mornings, showing them how to respect the water and its creatures. He thought of the countless community fish fries he had supplied, the laughter and joy that filled the air. Oh, how the town has changed. What happened to the community spirit, to the shared joys and simple pleasures? The lake, once a symbol of unity and tradition, now stands as a monument to division and exclusivity. How can progress mean tearing down the very essence of what made this place home? The first light of dawn, as the sun painted the sky with hues of gold and pink, George's heart ached for the touch of the familiar, the soothing rhythm of casting his line into the waters that had nurtured his family for generations. He remembered the elderly widows, their hands trembling as they received his weekly deliveries, their smiles a testament to the community he had helped sustain. The memory of 3 successive mayors, each extending a handshake, each a symbol of gratitude for his dedication to Millwater's food pantry, now seemed like distant echoes, swallowed by the cold, impersonal stroke of a pen that had transferred ownership to those who viewed the lake merely as a commodity, a mere line item on a development plan. His phone rang again, shattering the morning's fragile peace. It was his daughter, her voice tight with concern, from Arizona. "They sent me the video, Dad," she said, her words laced with urgency. "This is exactly why I've been asking you to come live near us." "It's just a misunderstanding," George replied, his voice heavy with the weight of unspoken grief. He couldn't bear to burden her with the full extent of his sorrow. "It's not, and you know it. That town doesn't deserve you anymore. They've forgotten who built it, who kept it going through hard times," she insisted, her plea echoing in his mind. Perhaps she was right. As the darkness enveloped the lake, George's thoughts wandered to his ancestors, the Harmons who had fished these waters, whose lives were interwoven with the lakes. His father, who had taught him the art of casting a line, and his grandfather, who had laid the foundations of the town's first fish market, all seemed to whisper through the rustling leaves, urging him to stay rooted. "I'll think about it," he told his daughter, though both knew his roots were too deep, too entwined with this land. He wasn't asking for wealth or rights. He just longed to feel the connection to the waters that had been his lifeblood. If you've ever felt pushed out from a place you once called home, you understand the depth of his reluctance to leave. The following morning broke with an unusual clarity, the kind that photographers chase but rarely capture. George awoke before dawn, as was his habit, and sat on his porch with a cup of black coffee. Without his daily fishing ritual, the early hours stretched before him, empty and unfamiliar. Then, at the first light of dawn, as the sun painted the sky with hues of gold and pink, George's heart ached for the touch of the familiar, the soothing rhythm of casting his line into the waters that had nurtured his family for generations. At precisely 700 hours, the air was pierced by the deep, authoritative growl of marine engines. This was no ordinary sound. It was not the gentle hum of the recreational boats that usually danced across the lake, but a sound imbued with purpose, with a command that could not be ignored. George, his heart skipping a beat, set his coffee down with a trembling hand. Curiosity, a persistent companion, urged him towards the shore, despite his earlier reluctance to revisit the new private property and its watchful guardians. As he approached, the sight before him rooted him to the spot. 8 naval rigid-hull inflatable boats, RHIBs, flags of the United States fluttering proudly at their sterns, cut through the water in perfect formation. Each vessel was manned by sailors not in their everyday work attire, but dressed in their service dress blues, as if arriving at a grand military ball. The residents of Millwater, stirred by the unusual spectacle, flowed out of their homes and businesses, gathering along the shoreline. Even the construction workers at the new development site ceased their noisy labors, their machines falling silent in awe. The security guard, the same one who had challenged George the day before, stood frozen at the dock entrance, his radio pressed to his lips, seeking guidance that did not come. The lead boat docked with the precision of a seasoned dancer, and from it emerged a figure of command. Tall, with silver hair and the insignia of a retired Navy colonel, Samuel Everett moved with an air of undeniable authority. His gaze swept over the crowd, locking onto George, who stood somewhat apart. "Attention!" Colonel Everett's voice boomed, and every sailor snapped into perfect posture. The colonel stepped forward, addressing the gathered throng in a voice that resonated across the water. "My name is Colonel Samuel Everett, United States Navy, retired. 42 years ago, during a storm that claimed the USS Liberty, Chief Petty Officer George Harmon heroically saved 12 men from my unit." The crowd's murmur swelled, their eyes fixed on George with a newfound awe, trying to bridge the gap between the serene, unassuming fisherman and the storied hero before them. "What many of you don't know," the colonel's voice rang out, clear and strong, "is that after his honorable discharge, George Harmon continued his service right here." His words painted a vivid picture, the flood of '89, where George with his trusty boat became a beacon of hope, evacuating 27 souls from the beleaguered eastern shore. And then, in the drought of '95, when the earth was parched and wells ran dry, there he was again, installing water purification systems for families, a silent guardian against the creeping despair. For 40 long years, George had been the unsung sentinel of the lake, his daily water quality checks, becoming the backbone of the Environmental Protection Agency's regional assessments. From another boat stepped a figure, a younger man in uniform, his presence commanding attention. "My name is Lieutenant Commander James Wilson," he declared, his voice thick with emotion. "I exist because George Harmon carried my father through gunfire on his back during the final evacuation of Saigon." His words hung in the air, a testament to the ripple effect of a single, selfless act. "When my father couldn't afford my college education, Mr. Harmon anonymously provided a scholarship fund for veterans' children in this county. I'm here because a man who asked nothing for himself gave everything for others." Just then, the Horizon Leisure Group manager, clipboard in hand, attempted to assert control. "This is a private event space now," he began, but was swiftly interrupted by a woman emerging from the third boat. Clad in a formal dark suit, she exuded authority. "I'm Amanda Richards, Department of Interior," she announced, her voice cutting through the murmurs. "This lake falls under the National Historical Waterways Protection Act due to its documented use by 3 Native American tribes." She brandished an official document, her eyes sharp with purpose. "As of 600 this morning, all development has been temporarily suspended pending a full environmental and historical review." The security guard, who had earlier torn George's permit, now shuffled uncomfortably, his confidence waning as a sailor approached, extending a hand with something in it. Here, in the gentle rustle of the sea breeze, lies a humble yet profoundly significant piece of history, a folded sheet of paper, a relic of bygone days, now revealed to the light of day. This is no ordinary document. It is the sacred bond between George Harmon and the town of Millwater, a pact etched in ink back in 1983. "We're on a ton," the sailor declared, his voice resonant with pride. "This agreement bestowed upon George the inalienable right to fish these waters for life, a just compensation for his vigilant environmental stewardship. Oh, how this simple paper has transcended the mere exchange of rights. It stands as an unbreakable environmental service contract recognized by the very heart of the federal government." As cameras captured this revelation, the atmosphere shifted, the once mocking lenses now filming with a newfound reverence. Hashtags like George Harmon Day began to light up local social media, igniting a flame of recognition and respect. The veterans, these guardians of memory and honor, had not come unprepared. They erected a solemn memorial along the shoreline, a plaque that whispers tales of the USS Liberty and celebrates George's unyielding service, both to the Navy and to Millwater. They formed an honor guard along the dock, their presence a silent tribute, forging a path to where George habitually casts his line. Colonel Everett, a figure from George's past, approached him, his hand extended in a gesture of solidarity. "The men and women here today," he declared, his voice echoing with the weight of generations, "represent sailors who haven't forgotten what honor looks like. We heard what happened. Word travels fast among veterans." George's grip was firm, a silent testament to his gratitude, his eyes betraying the storm of emotions beneath his stoic exterior. "You didn't have to come all this way, Sam," he managed to say, his voice thick with emotion. "Yes, we did," Colonel Everett replied, his words simple yet profound. "No one gets to erase what you've done. Not for us, not for this town." The crowd swelled as the news rippled through Millwater, drawing faces from the town council, their expressions now tinged with the sobering realization of their oversight. The mayor, in a hurried arrival, straightened his tie as he approached the makeshift podium, his eyes darting between the veterans, the developers, and the federal representative. "On behalf of Millwater," he began, his voice tinged with both anxiety and admiration, "I want." In a stirring announcement that reverberated through the community, we declared an immediate review of the lakeside contract. "Moreover, we are setting the stage for a lasting tribute by establishing a permanent veterans landing zone on the eastern shore, ensuring public access and giving special recognition to George Harmon's lifelong fishing rights." With a gesture of profound respect, a new laminated permit was extended towards George, who received it with a quiet dignity that spoke volumes. What the speeches failed to capture, what no video could fully convey, was the profound shift in perception among the townsfolk. The invisible barrier that once separated George, the old man of a fading era, had vanished. In its place blossomed a new understanding that the value of some individuals transcends mere economic metrics or property values. As the formalities drew to a close, George did something unexpected, something that tugged at the heartstrings of everyone present. He ambled to his truck, retrieved an old but cherished fishing rod, and returned to the dock. With the practiced motions of one who has performed this ritual countless times, he baited his hook, cast his line into the shimmering water, and simply sat. One by one, the veterans joined him, settling into a respectful silence along the dock. No more speeches, no further declarations, just the quiet solidarity of those who knew that some battles are fought not with weapons, but with simple, dignified persistence. The week following what locals now call Navy Day ushered in changes to Millwater that few could have anticipated. The story went viral, embraced by national news outlets as a modern David versus Goliath narrative. Faced with a public relations quagmire and looming legal challenges from the Department of Interior, Horizon Leisure Group announced they were reevaluating their development strategy to honor the area's rich cultural and historical tapestry. This decision marked the beginning of a new chapter, one where the heart of the community beats in harmony with its past, present, and future. At George's Landing, the dock's keeper of the waters, a sign stood tall, crafted by a local artisan. Its simplicity echoed the dignity of the man it celebrated. George, the man of the hour, had always shunned the limelight, yet he recognized the deeper significance of the tribute. It was a beacon of community values, not just a nod to him. What truly stirred his heart, though, were the children. They started to gather at the dock each morning, initially drawn by curiosity about the old man from the viral video, but soon their interest deepened into a thirst for knowledge. With the same patience he once bestowed upon young sailors, George taught them the art of knot tying, how to decipher the water's surface for signs of fish lurking beneath, and the virtue of waiting in silence until the perfect moment arrived. One morning, a young girl, grappling with her fishing line, asked with a voice tinged with fear, "Do you ever get scared of the water?" George's eyes twinkled as he assisted her small hands in securing the bait. "I was terrified when I was beneath it during the storm that claimed my ship," he confessed. "But sitting beside it, watching over it, never afraid." "Because you're friends?" she inquired with the straightforwardness only a child could muster. "Because we understand each other," George replied, his voice a gentle rumble. "Water remembers everything it touches. It was here long before us and will be here long after. The trick is learning to listen to its whispers." She pondered this, her expression unusually solemn, then nodded, as if he had voiced a truth she had already sensed. Meanwhile, the security guard who had once ripped George's permit vanished, his absence a silent acknowledgment of his mistake. One morning, George found a new USS Liberty cap, its navy blue fabric crisp, placed with care on his usual bench. No note, no explanation, just the cap, a silent tribute to the sailor who had become a guardian of the waters. As the golden threads of the embroidery shimmered under the morning light, George felt the weight of the gesture, but chose not to wear it. Instead, his hand rested on it momentarily, a silent nod to the honor bestowed upon him. His focus shifted to setting up his fishing gear, the old, faded cap securely on his head. Sometimes, apologies are best conveyed through actions rather than words. Mayor Thompson, ever the astute observer of the political breeze, established a Veterans Advisory Council to guide future development projects. With a reluctant yet respectful nod, George accepted his role. The council's inaugural decision, passed with unanimous consent, was to dedicate a fraction of the burgeoning tourism revenue to preserve public access to the natural wonders that had nurtured the town long before it became a haven for the affluent. Colonel Everett made his regular pilgrimage, sometimes accompanied, sometimes solitary, to join George in those tranquil pre-dawn moments when the lake lay still as glass. Their dialogue was minimal yet profound, revolving around the water, the whispering winds of change, and the enduring cycles of nature that persisted amidst the whirlwind of modernization. "The developers are still set on the western shore," the colonel remarked one morning. "Luxury condos, a marina, the whole package." George, adjusting his fishing line, responded with a thoughtful nod. "Change arrives, invited or not," he mused. "What matters is safeguarding what truly counts." "Like you," the colonel interjected, "still standing your ground after all these years." George offered a gentle correction. "Like the water," he said. "I'm just a traveler here, like everyone else. But what we do during our fleeting time, that's what resonates." The lake, with its stoic indifference, mirrored the sky, danced with the breeze, and generously offered its bounty to those with the patience to wait. The human stories unfolding on its shores were but fleeting interruptions in its timeless existence. Oh, how the lake had seen it all, with a serenity that asked, "What will you leave behind in your wake?" As the early spring sun cast a gentle glow over the lake, George arrived at his customary perch to a delightful surprise. A group of elementary school students, each with a clipboard in hand, stood eagerly awaiting his arrival. Their teacher, with a spark of excitement in her eyes, introduced the young scholars, explaining that they were embarked on a year-long quest to unravel the secrets of the lake's ecosystem. They hoped George, with his seasoned wisdom, might share his insights. What ensued was nothing short of a masterclass in practical ecology. George, with a passion that only decades of love for the lake could ignite, demonstrated how to gauge water purity with the simplest of tools, how to discern the myriad of fish species darting beneath the surface, and how to detect the subtle signs of environmental stress. The children, their faces alight with wonder, scribbled notes furiously, capturing knowledge that no textbook or digital screen could ever convey. "Mr. Harmon has been keeping daily records longer than even the EPA," the teacher proudly announced to her captivated students. "His notebooks," she continued, her voice almost reverent, "hold climate data that scientists now use to trace the long-term environmental shifts in our region." A small hand shot up among the sea of eager learners. "But you're not a scientist," a boy remarked, his voice tinged with the straightforwardness of youth. George chuckled, his eyes twinkling with a lifetime of stories. "No," he agreed, "I'm just someone who's been paying attention for a very long time." Perhaps that was his true legacy, not the medals tucked away in his cedar chest, nor the dock newly named in his honor, but this amassed wisdom born from daily observation and a steadfast presence. In a world increasingly dominated by data analytics and computer modeling, George embodied something more primal, the irreplaceable value of bearing witness to the slow, often invisible changes that only decades of faithful attention could reveal. The luxury development did eventually rise on the western shore, though its grandeur was tempered from the original, grandiose plans. From George's fishing spot, He could see the modern buildings, their glass facades, mirroring the same waters he had watched for a lifetime. He harbored no resentment towards the newcomers. After all, they too were drawn by the lake's beauty, its promise of tranquility. Perhaps in time, they would come to understand, as he had, the deep, enduring connection between the land and its people. Oh, the profound lesson he had learned long ago, that the true essence of a place lies not in what one can extract, but in how profoundly one can immerse themselves into its very soul. Some individuals spend their entire existence cherishing a spot where others see nothing, clutching tightly to what has been forsaken by others. Yet it's only in the moment of loss that we truly grasp the irreplaceable nature of some souls. This tale might slip from your mind in mere days, but should it go untold, history will fall into an eternal silence. Do not let this story fade into oblivion. Subscribe to our channel, where tales of justice, kindness, and undying memory find their sanctuary. Remember, if you dare to cast that line once more, I'm calling the police, the guard bellowed, his voice a stark contrast to the serene lake, as he forcefully stripped the rod from the elderly fisherman's grasp. Not a soul came to his defense, not a whisper was heard. Only the old Navy cap tumbled to the dock, as the fisherman turned away, his broken rod cradled like a folded flag. Yet dawn broke with a stirring sight. Boats slicing through the morning mist, their hulls a silent, military gray. Who summoned them? Why had the lake, in its deep, reflective waters, remembered the man who once belonged to it? In closing, we extend our heartfelt gratitude to you, our dear viewers, for joining us on this poignant journey. Please let your thoughts be known in the comments below. Like, share, and subscribe to keep these stories alive, to honor those who have touched the world with their silent presence. Thank you for being a part of our community, where every story matters.